Right, well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to our third Birmingham City of Nature Alliance meeting. I'm pretty sure everybody on this call knows me, but for those of you who don't, I'm Hamara Sultan, Future Parks Director and Public Health Consultant at Birmingham City Council. Before we start off, I just wanted to say some massive thank yous. Not everybody's here that needs a thank you. So Debbie Needle, who's been instrumental in getting us this far, done a sterling job. So thank you, Debbie, for being my right-hand woman on this particular, on lots of other things, but especially this particular task for Future Parks. Nick's been also heavily involved as well. Tamsin House from National Trust couldn't be here today, but a lot of her hard work and thinking has got us to this point today as well. And Casey Morrison from National Trust has been tremendous too. So apologies first of all for changing the agenda slightly. We've just taken one bit out rather than shifted things around massively. We've been talking about this meeting for quite some time now and had a run through last week internally, and there's too many things to cover. The plan was that we would talk about this BCoN, which we're now calling it BCoN Alliance, because City of Nature Alliance had the word con in it, and it just felt a bit like, yeah, that wasn't the most positive way, the most positive acronym for using for a new partnership. So from now on, we'll be calling it BCoN Alliance, and it just felt like we had a lot to sort through in terms of business of BCoN, and also how we're going to spend £150,000 that is on the table to help get the alliance started. So we were going to also look at action planning for Borsley and Highgate, but what we've now agreed as a team is we'll hold a separate session for that in September, a separate workshop, which still gives us plenty of time to do what we need to do in terms of setting up the alliance. It just means that we'll have a much more, hopefully, in-depth conversation. And this is a conversation. It absolutely isn't going to be me talking for 2 hours. We absolutely want people to give their feedback, how you do that, whether it's online by the chat function or raising your hands or what have you. We will be pausing every so often in the presentation for you to come in and give us your feedback and thoughts. We're not going to be really going through documentation per se. That's all been sent out in advance. I will be referencing it. So, for instance, the CRM business case, the fictional data we've put in there, the MOU, we'll refer to it. But anybody has any particular comments to make about that, then please use this as an opportunity to do that as well. So if I just quickly share the agenda with you folks, we'll have a comfort break halfway through so that you can rehydrate and have a comfort break and so forth. So it's a long time to be sat down, 2 hours. So if I just bring up the agenda, the second version, let's do a quick screen share. Oh, sorry, that hasn't worked. There we go. So for the first kind of, between kind of 11, 10 and 12, we're just getting onto that. We'll be talking through a bit of giving you a recap about the environmental justice work that we're doing and the Birmingham Fair audit, as we're now calling it. And we'll start to kind of reference the draft MOU as well as the CRM, the customer reference management tool that has been discussed. We'll then have a break. And then we will start to talk about the approach of actually the £150,000 that we're using to spend on the alliance. And a big part of that is getting action done within Borsley and Highgate as well. So we'll start to reference the action plan, but not go into huge amounts of detail. And I just want to really put it out there right from the beginning is that we've had lots of conversations now with various partners. And there has been, some questions about the process of how we're going to appoint the alliance and who's going to be a part of it. So there's 2 stages to the alliance, I should say, just to kind of get this into people's minds. Well, two parts of it, I should say. There's being a member, which just literally means that you're part of the alliance and you could respond to calls for support and what have you. Then there is also a delivery member of the alliance, and that's where a lot of that money will go to. So we have decided, after much discussion internally, that we are going to have a tender process for this. I was trying to avoid that because tendering is quite a long-winded process and doesn't always give you the outcomes that you want. But I think in the balance with everything that we have talked about, that's probably the fairest way of making sure that everybody gets the opportunity to have their have their voices heard and considered. So if we crack on with the presentation, I'm just going to do a screen share, folks. This should be coming up. Right, can everybody see that okay?
Yeah.
Brill, okay. It's just loading up on my end, so if you just bear with me. Brilliant, okay. So we're just going to have a bit of a catch up and review really in terms of where we are. It's always good, I think, to be able to just remind people where we got to last time. So I'll kick off and then I'll bring Nick in to talk about environmental justice. So just in terms of really just to update everybody, so the Birmingham City Nature Alliance is going to form is a very strong part of our Birmingham City of Nature vision. We've had approval from our corporate leadership team to progress this, and we are currently working to a plan around January cabinet now to be able to get this agreed. So and the reason why we're talking about our future city plan here is the City of Nature vision is sitting firmly within the camp of Ian MacLeod, our Acting Director of Inclusive Growth. Birmingham's on a journey to becoming more livable as a city, and inclusive growth are owning that really in terms of the clean air zone, low traffic neighbourhoods, the Route to Zero task force, our future city plan. And those of you who have read it, or even if you haven't, I really recommend you do give it a read. There are a number of themes within that plan, and one of them is a City of Nature. And the City of Nature vision, an action plan that we are developing at the moment, of which the City of Nature Alliance is part of, is absolutely key there. So we just want to kind of just highlight to you how it's all kind of joining up. I'm not going to go through all these slides word for word, folks. We will send these out afterwards, so you've got them as a reference point. There's a lot of information on here, but just so you have it. So why do we need a City of Nature vision? Well, we're in the 21st century. Climate change is something that maybe not everybody is talking about, should be talking about, but it's taking more and more precedence. And for us, this is a big part of the answer to that issue that we're seeing at the moment. You know, I've already kind of talked about all the other things that are going on in terms of making a city more livable. But the CAS, the Route to Zero task force, our future city plan, all of those things completely tie back into climate change as well. So the vision is a 25-year plan. Nick will take you through a series of slides which kind of talk through our process of how we're going to prioritise certain areas. But just to assure you, this plan is not sitting by itself in the council. Someone described it, one of our directors, as having a necklace, and there are various jewels that make up the necklace. And the City of Nature vision is very much a connector in all of that. So why do we need a City of Nature Alliance? Birmingham has some fantastic organisations that really push the agenda hard and do wonderful things around our green spaces and blue spaces. So just to say, going forward, when I say green spaces, I mean blue spaces too, because without green you wouldn't have blue. That's for you, Gavin, in terms of CRT. So Nick says that to me all the time, you know, and that's absolutely true. Without blue you wouldn't have green. So and I'm not going to invent a new phrase like turquoise spaces for that. So
depends on the time of year usually.
So yeah, and you know, one of the things that we know is that without community organisations we wouldn't be able to do half as much as we do with our green spaces. We know that everybody who's on this call today, from a community perspective, makes a massive contribution to our green spaces, whether it's activating them, whether it's through helping Friends of Park groups, whether it's through volunteering on the canals, whether it's tree planting, whether it, there's a whole host of lists, and apologies if I've missed you out, not intentional at all. But one of the things that we know that doesn't happen enough is the coordination of that activity. And this is where we think the alliance is really, really important, because we need someone, well, we need a partnership or an alliance to be able to coordinate that work. As a city council as well, we don't do enough coordination of activity. And, you know, through the work, the things that Nick will talk you through, you know, we're attempting to do things in a far more coordinated way. So using green spaces as a hook, as a lever, and getting various parts of the council to work together, as well as our community organisations that sit outside of the council, but are very, very much linked to us. So in the slides, we talk about a funding model. So we'll talk some more about that as we get further down this meeting. But absolutely, that funding model is about using the money for place, for people, and sustainable finance as well. That's what we're doing in the council in terms of investment in green spaces. We're using it to tackle the place agenda for green spaces, using it to tackle the whole people connectedness to green spaces, but also thinking about how we use that money from a sustainable perspective as well. And this alliance, you know, it is what it says in the tin. It's a partnership. It isn't about one organisation being in charge of everything, but we need a partnership of some organisations who are really willing to put their neck above the parapet, I guess, and say we're going to take a leadership role and help support other organisations to maximise the benefit that they can bring to Birmingham. So in terms of a bit of a review of what you said and we did, so first up, people I think were very interested in the idea, but without funding, people said to us, nothing's going to happen. Even though there was an element of community fundraising, someone still has to coordinate that. So we've got some money from the Commonwealth Games Legacy. And we have promised our funders, Cat Orchard, who is responsible for that. She's not here today, unfortunately, I don't think, because she's got a clash. We have to present to her with a clear plan by the end of August how this money is going to be spent, and that will be in the form of a specification for a tender. People said that the vision feels right in terms of City of Nature, and that, you know, stakeholders must work together across Birmingham to achieve it. So we asked people, we asked everyone that we could think of in this green space, and we've missed anybody off, we apologise. But we did ask who would be willing to contribute to deliver the vision via a survey. We got 4 responses back saying they want to play a lead role, and 3 saying that they were interested in taking part but not in leading. There was no appetite for another organisation like a foundation to act in this space, so we said, okay, let us help you create an alliance. And this is where we've got to at the moment, really, I guess. Oh, why is that not coming up? Okay. So we also discussed a number of things as well. So as a programme, the Naturally Birmingham programme has tested various initiatives, and we've taken and just some of those we've kind of listed here for you. So from a people perspective, we've shown that mentoring young people in green spaces works, developing green champions works, virtual engagement works, training leaders works, having on-site sessions works. From a place perspective, notice boards work. Not enough of our parks have notice boards. So this would be a key task to change from an alliance perspective. Things like kind of creating new landscaping for nature recovery. We've done that in Dorbury Fields, and it's been such a positive response from the community, and that work's about to start. Sensory gardens, they work. Communal gardens work. So, and just from an environmental justice perspective and an audit that we've done, which is now called the Birmingham Fair Audit, in terms of the kind of things, you know, from the Birmingham Worsley Highgate ward perspective, even before we started talking about money, we asked people, okay, what could you currently do with your existing resources to help improve the green spaces in Worsley and Highgate? And there was a big response. You know, from what we've seen, people are willing, absolutely, to use their existing time and resources and just tweak things to be able to have more of a presence in Worsley and Highgate. But we also said to people, well, there is some money available, and this kind of funding split of 50k of the 150k for place, people and sustainable finance felt okay. This feels like the right direction for us, but in no way are we tied to this. So just to kind of put that out there, folks, from a tender perspective, we won't be looking for people to spend that money 50 exactly. If you can show to us that that money is spent better in a different way, then we're absolutely happy to consider that. One of the things we need to really get to the bottom of during this conversation is how much direction do you want from us as a council in the specification, and how much do you want to have space to develop in usual professional expertise that you're bringing to the table. So we could specify 50. No, that's 200, 50. But that to me feels like not the right thing to do. But again, we can pick that up as part of the conversation as we go forward. So where are we now? You know, we've got kind of, if you look at the global perspective, you know, there's a climate crisis and people are talking about it. From a UK perspective, we've got the FPA programme. Locally in Birmingham, we have Naturally Birmingham. And then we start getting into the whole kind of, you know, from an approach perspective, we've done some research, we've done some engagement and consultation, we've developed things, we've tested them. We've now got something, City of Nature vision, and we're now talking about delivery as well. So there's a parallel process happening here. We're not waiting for the vision to be signed off completely before we do anything. We haven't got time for that. So we have to do both in process. Okay. Right, I'm going to pause there for a bit, just for a couple of minutes to see, from what I've just talked about, from the recap and just introducing the idea of a tender, are there any questions, folks? Anyone got any comments or questions or points for clarification? And then we'll pass over to Nick for 10 minutes to talk you through kind of environmental justice. So feel free to, you know, raise your hand and ask any questions or. Okay. So there's nothing, I think, at the moment. So right, so we'll keep going. So Nick, if I control the slides, are you happy to go on to talk just a little bit about Worsley and Highgate Ward, just to bring everybody up to speed again in terms of where we are, please?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Yeah, thanks, Samira. Morning, everyone. Not everyone on the call probably knows me. My name's Nick Grayson. I'm the Green City Manager with Birmingham City Council, and I'm also a Senior Research Fellow at the University of Birmingham. So I work part-time on FPA and part-time at the university, and so I've missed a few of these workshops due to those sort of clashes, so I've not been in them all. But I am firmly part of the FPA team. So this concept of environmental justice, we've developed it very much as part of the programme, and it's emerged really. We didn't set out to create it. It just became blindingly obvious to us that there was a really significant gap in the way in which cities assess needs across cities at the moment, and they use the indices of multiple deprivation, which gets mentioned on news programs, and you'll see in newspapers and all sorts of reports, and that indices, interestingly enough, is set, monitored and managed by the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government, MHCLG, who are also the government sponsor of this Future Parks Accelerator programme, because they're responsible for local authorities, planning functions and parks, as well as housing and communities. So they're the ones overseeing all this programme. From a government perspective, they're also heavily involved in discussions in relation to post-COVID recovery plans or the government's levelling up agenda. So we've been also having discussions with them in relation to this idea of environmental justice, and it's resonating very strongly with them. What we're oh, hang on, Amir, I was just on that slide. What we're recommending to them is that we're saying there's a domain missing in their indices set, and it relates to these 4 topic areas of access to green space, flood risk, urban heat island, and health inequalities. And those are measures that, when you put them together, really start to give you a sense of urgency as to why things need to change. And at the moment, this national set of data that it asks all cities to look at doesn't recognise access to green space. It doesn't pick up on flood risk or urban heat island, both of which are very significant in relation to climate change impact. And nor does it couple them with health inequalities, which in reality is more to do with your postcode than your genetic code, determining how long you live and what quality of health you have. So we think this is a really sort of powerful data set. And what it says straight away is that there are these central zones of Birmingham that, from a green space perspective, are undersupplied, and the quality is not what it should be. That's no fault of the Park Service, it's just historic in many ways in terms of where space has been created and how it's been allocated. And this opens up a really, really interesting question, because the Future Parks Accelerator programme is a national programme going on trying to solve the position of parks in cities. There are 8 cities participating, and only Plymouth, which is one of our partner cities, is looking at it from anything other than a Park Service perspective. All the other cities are looking at it from a Park Service perspective only. And what we're trying to do in Birmingham is say the problem or the challenge that the city faces is far greater than the Park Service, and the role of the Park Service therefore needs to be integrated into finding those solutions, and that the natural environment is very much part of the solutions to addressing those 21st century challenges. So it's kind of bringing up the political importance of parks and open spaces, and this screams very loudly when you look at this map, in terms of this is a very large percentage of the population in great need. So it changes the reason for why parks are important, and that's why we are running with it. It's not the only thing we've got in our vision, but it's like a step change in terms of where the priority should be. So that's the reason for introducing it. And you can just see at that map, there's a complete spectrum from deep green right through to red, and that reflects how those combination of factors work at a ward level across the city. Our ambition is that over the entire 25-year vision, we would look to get all those ward slots at the top as close to green as we could from a parks and open space natural environment perspective. Now, that would be a tremendous change for Birmingham, and it would start to make Birmingham look and feel like a green city as opposed to an urban metropolis, which you perhaps consider some of it feels like at the moment. Next slide, please. So our focus area is Broadley and Highgate. That sits within the East Birmingham development corridor, and so chimes with a lot of the other work that the whole of the City Council is trying to focus on and work with. And that's one of the good reasons for choosing it as a pilot area, because it opens up the possibility that the solutions to these issues are not just for the Park Service to solve. What we've got on that slide are 5 green open spaces providing the public access in that ward. And the condition of those sites isn't as good as it might be. And our programme is to lift the condition of those sites to what we're going to term a Birmingham fair standard. But even if we did do that, that particular ward is well below the recommended supply of green and open space provision that should be there. And you'll notice a lot of red outlines. The red outlines are proposed future development. So as a city, what we've got to try and do is not just entirely block those red lines out with more grey concrete built form, but we've actually got to integrate and connect the green spaces. And that's why we're working with the our future city plan team on how we can change the look and feel of Birmingham collectively as a corporate response, as a city response, and the Park Service playing a new role in that, rather than as always being the last ones invited to the discussions. We've got to change the way that operates. So next slide, please, Amira. Those are the aerial shots or Google shots of those 5 particular spaces, and they're excellent in their own way, but they need to be lifted slightly. And one of the very significant things that's happened over the last 10 years at least is with the withdrawal of frontline service staff from a parks point of view, just through the sheer pressure of austerity cuts, there isn't the interface with the communities that used to exist on those sites. So fundamentally, that's one of the things that we want to put back, so that it's no longer a top-down process, but something that would be bottom-up. So we have designed an audit form, but due to COVID, we've not been able to do it directly with the communities. We will once this has gone through as an exercise. So yes, next slide, please, Amira. You will recall from earlier conversations where we had this idea of basic, better, best. And for those who watch Antiques Roadshow, you'll perhaps recognise how that works. But the idea was that our consideration is many of our sites we would class as basic at the moment, and we want to progress them to a better or best standard. The difficulty is the funding required, and it also opens up 2 very significant questions. When we submitted the Future Parks Accelerator programme, the grant aid conditions and the conditions from our then chief executive to agree to it was that this wasn't going to be a mechanism to prop up a failing park service if you were to consider the park service is failing. And this had to be something that was transformative and worked right across the council. So we can't just go to the council through this programme and say, please add £1 million to the parks budget and it will solve our problem, because that cuts against both the grant aid conditions and the conditions we signed up to with the then chief exec. We have to come up with a solution that works across council and that is sustainable. And so what we've also looked at is this whole issue of people engagement as being absolutely critical, whereas the focus has been on grounds maintenance. And so we want to switch that focus, add the focus of people engagement, which then brings you into that central column around a Birmingham Fair standard. Now, if we move to the next slide, please, Amira. This is our audit sheet. Now, I apologise if that's difficult to read, but the thing to focus on actually is the coloured band lines across the centre of the diagram. And those band scores come from the National Green Flag Award scheme. Now, we've been in discussion with them and some of the Green Flag Award judges, because Green Flag is an award of excellence. And the difficulty that's set up nationally is that Park Service under austerity have continued to pursue Green Flag, but we're then in a process where, if we're not careful, what we're doing is doing things at one end of the spectrum and not doing them at the other end of the spectrum. So we're maintaining excellence, and we're not maintaining a sort of fair standard at the other end. And what we've looked at and what we've discussed with them is that they have an entry point for their Green Flag Award. And we think that that should be our sort of benchmark in terms of a Birmingham Fair Standard. And what we've done is look at their assessment process, which is very confined to just the site and the site boundary, and focuses a lot on assets and past history. And what we've done is set that alongside this environmental justice agenda, because the Green Flag doesn't kind of pick up on that. And we've merged the two into a new audit, which is really more a case of recognising the importance in relation to that environmental justice, how we need to pick those sites up now with some urgency and move them forward so that they become usable community assets right now, rather than saying we'll wait 10 years for some development money to come through. So our programme in relation to these red wards is focused in getting them up to that fair standard. Once at that fair standard, the fact that that fair standard represents the entry point to Green Flag, then if development money or some other money comes along, you could very easily take those sites through to being best on an individual basis with additional funding. But from a corporate point of view, our commitment from a city council point of view would be to say that all at the end of this 25-year, program, all the green spaces that we have under our wing would be at a fair standard. Now that is a huge ask, actually, but it's very significant. The other thing that would happen as part of that, as well as the community articulation, is that we would bring the nature recovery programme for the city into that agenda very much, so that these sites play a vital role. And that's also part of the climate challenge. And the commitment from the city is that they're going to take environmental justice that we've developed and this audit mechanism and create a climate assessment process for all development and all operations. And this was a way in which we'll recognise the importance of both nature, green infrastructure, and access and use and health benefits and all that. So what we're doing is trying to embed a process within the whole corporate structure, as well as providing a new focus for the Park Service and the Friends groups and the Alliance. So it's a sort of joined up picture that we're trying to create. It's been a bit messy and it's been a bit slow, but we're making really good progress now. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we'll skip that one. Next slide. Only because that was difficult to read. And really, what it was trying to highlight is that you can do some very simple things and have a very good impact. And that's what we're trying to focus on, is not suggesting that we need a MUGA in every one of these sites. It isn't. It's getting it right, and also about getting our base maintenance right, which at the moment, again, sadly, is not true for all sites. So it's this joined up picture that we're trying to create and lift a level to this Birmingham Fair Standard as being a new sort of benchmark that we want to achieve. And it's resonated well with the other FPA cities. They're really quite interested in it. And as I say, MHCLG are interested, and we're also now having discussions with Green Flag as to whether this could be a different award mechanism, recognising sort of community initiative to get their sites to an entry level, rather than it always being about top end excellence, which is automatically exclusive rather than inclusive. Anyway, I'll probably leave it there, and happy to take any questions. And Amira might want to say something else about that process. Thanks.
Brilliant. Thank you, Nick. And just to, yeah, absolutely affirm, Nick is very much part of FPA. He wouldn't be here without him. So I thought it was really important, folks, that because we have some new attendees today as well that haven't been able to make the previous meeting. So apologies if it felt a bit like we were repeating ourselves, but this is the backbone of the Alliance as this whole process. Without these audits and the action plans that are forming from them, we don't need an Alliance to exist, in all honesty. So that's why it was really important that you all got to hear that again. I think for some of you who have heard it already. So any questions on that, points of clarification, comment? Just from my perspective, it's the first time we've seen, well, I'm going to say my lifetime career at the council has only been about 18 months, but lots of people say to me that we haven't seen this level of coordination going on from a whole range of different parts of the council as well. So in terms of this action plan, it's not just down to the Alliance to deliver it. It will be down to a BCC operations team as well, which is made up of a whole host of people who rarely ever come together for a conversation. So, okay, I don't think we've got any questions, Nick, which probably suggests that you were very clear and articulate in what you said, as usual. So, okay, but it's about some questions about MOU. So we're going to go into kind of some of the detail now about some of the things that we talked about last time about the CRM and also the MOU. So just to quickly revisit this whole idea, we had some challenge about a CRM, but from our perspective as an FPA team and from the Commonwealth Games funding, we need a system to collect volunteer data. Nick, there's a question from Ian I think you can probably answer in the chat while I'm talking, please, about why we chose BHI. There's lots of reasons for that, Ian. How you capture data, what system you use, how you inform people of the need for it. You know what? Absolutely, that's all up for discussion. But we absolutely need a way to capture data. At the moment, we can't say as a system within Birmingham how many volunteers or green champions we have. Other places can around the country. Yes, we are smaller. They are much smaller than us than Birmingham. But you know, when I think my public health hat on, without measurement, we can't show anything in public health. So for me, this is something that we really have to find a way of fixing. So we will have a CRM, but what it looks like, I think is very much up to again, the question back to you folks is, do you want us to specify what we want a CRM to look like? Or do you want to use your professional expertise in telling us what we think we should have as well? So we can do either. We've got some quite strong ideas. I think, you know, as an absolute minimum, it needs to record demographics, you know, and also understanding what people, not only do they volunteer and what they also want to volunteer in. We don't want this just to be an annoying thing that people have to fill out. We want it to have value for them as well. So we've sent you a business case which hopefully details or makes the case for why we think a CRM is really needed. And we've also put together, yes, thank you Emma, about the CRM review. We also have put together a draft kind of database with some fictional data in that, you know, kind of, and some of the headings and tags that we think we really should include. In terms of also, you know, we're starting to use the terminology green champion. And yes, they are volunteers. But when you speak to some people about volunteering, they describe themselves as just being a volunteer, or they just do this. There's no just in volunteering. For people to give up their spare time and do what they do for our city, it's massive, absolutely massive. We have a city of 1.2 million people, you know, experience a whole range of challenges, and yet people still give their time in this amazing space. So there's nothing just about volunteering, and that's why we think we feel green champions is a much better. And again, we'd include blue champions here as well, Gavin, for kind of for canals, because without blue there is no green. I know Afsal had to join a little bit late, but we were just making the point, Afsal, when we talk about green spaces, we mean blue as well. So because without blue there is no green. I've said that so many times that I won't say it again. So so this terminology is what we want the Alliance to get behind as well. A green champion is somebody who champions their local or a green space they feel. Well, Emma, that's fine. We're not going to please everybody, I think, you know, but the feedback that we've had, people feel really kind of, you know, empowered, because they're viewed as something, and they've been given the right to actually do things. In our Green Champions programme that we've put on, people are doing things outside of their job role that they would never have done before, because they've been given that title of a Green Champion. It's given them the autonomy and the confidence to go and do something. So, and as a Green Champion, there's a whole number of things that you can do, and we've listed them here. So this is what we really want. Just to respond to Emma's point, but they're actually volunteering as well outside of they do. We can talk about this later, Emma, but I think there is a fundamental reason for why we're talking about Green Champions, and it's I think we've got some really interesting feedback on that.
Can I just say, I think the language matters less than the support we provide to people and the recognition we give them. It doesn't really matter. You call them champion, I'll call them volunteer. It really doesn't matter when it comes down to it. It's what we're actually doing to support them doing what they want to do. And I know you've done lots and lots of consultation, but we've also been doing this, all the groups represented here, for some of us decades. And there is real value in what people understand by the word volunteer. And champion is fine. You call whoever you want champion, but it might be that that's actually a different role. And it's a role for people who are, as you say, championing green space within things that are not green or blue. And that might be a fantastic role for that. But yeah, if you're trying to explain to people, please, will you turn up and do this on a Sunday with a black bin bag, they'll understand the word volunteer in the way they won't understand the word champion. But I don't think we need to spend too much time, and she said having wasted time on it. But you saying we're going to use this word, well, actually we're not. We're going to continue using the word that works for us, and that might be a different word in each community. I'll shut up now.
Okay. So we've had one question and comment from Emma. Does anybody want to comment on what we've put down in the CRM business case, or the fictional data that we've put down, and do people you know, want us to specify what we're looking for as a CRM, because that will be a big part of the tender process as well. Emma, I'm not sure if you want to come back in again.
So the tender process is after 12 o'clock, isn't it? You're looking at that.
Yeah.
Second. So surely the thing we need to do now is the MOU, because that's the basis by which we all work together, and we'll assess the tenders and we'll write the tenders, I'm guessing. So is the...
Yeah, I just want to give people the chance. We will have time for the MOU, Emma, as well, but I just want to give people the chance to give any comments on this bit, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, sorry, I thought you just asked me about the tender bit, and that's after 12 o'clock. And I'm just conscious we've got 13 minutes to discuss the MOU, which, if we're creating the alliance, seems to be a fairly pressing bit of the discussion.
Chris, do you want to come in?
Yeah, just comment on the CRM really, which is what you're asking for here. My experience over the last few years of combining organisational CRMs and trying to wrestle with an old established CRM is that we just need to make sure that that the data we need drives the CRM, and not the CRM drives what data we can have. That would be my only comment. So that specification early on is really important, because we need the CRM to do everything we want it to do, and not the other way around. And I certainly know that, you know, the constraints of having the database manager going, oh no, we can't do that because the CRM says this, and oh no, we can't do this because the CRM says that. We don't want to be there. So it's really important we get that right very early on.
That's really helpful feedback, Chris. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's pretty much confirmed for me. We need to be quite clear what it is that we want the CRM to do. So, brilliant. Okay, that's great. Thank you, Chris. So moving on in terms of, how will the alliance work? I've only got a couple of slides here really for you folks. So it's, we're not going to go through this massively. You know, you've seen the slides from last time, most of you. So an alliance is very much around a partnership, around mutual benefit and common purpose. So the common purpose here for the alliance is to deliver the aims of the City of Nature vision, and in terms of how you do that is through delivering action, which brings us all the way back again to full circle, back to the audits, why they're so important, and why I asked Nick to spend quite a lot of time of this meeting going through all that again, just to kind of again reiterate, folks, you know, the audit has to drive the alliance, and the results of it has to drive the alliance's work. So we've put together an MOU, and which has all been sent out, and I know Emma's going to come in here, but just in terms of kind of as an alliance, some people challenged the word roundtable because it just felt like a really, to some people, the feedback that we had was it just feels like a talking shop, not an action place. So we've taken that on board and scrapped that word roundtable. I think we have. If it's snuck into the MOU, I apologise, it shouldn't have done. But we're suggesting that in the MOU, the alliance works at 2 levels. One which is on a very membership basis. So you could be part of the alliance, say, I'm happy to be drafted in when is needed because I've got a geographical focus or I've got a particular skills focus around green spaces that can be brought in as and when is needed when you get to ward X, Y, or Z. And you could be that kind of part of, you could hold that role in the alliance and also be a delivery partner. So, or a delivery organisation. And in this particular role, what you're signing up to is that you're going to take a leadership role in the alliance. And we've suggested some key ones around communication, around volunteer management and a CRM. The two need to really go hand in hand, in all honesty. Around activation of parks as well, and also sustainable funding. We're using the word sustainable funding as well because that sustainable funding has to be able to go to parts of the city where there are no established groups that already exist. We've got a really good model that's working at the moment in terms of when you have existing community organisations, you know, and they can be supported to put in bids. I put my hand up put my community hat on as a Friends of Park chair. I've benefited massively from the support of BOSIF and Get Grants to get £10,000 into our park, which we're now spending very quickly. But not every place has that kind of infrastructure in terms of community groups. So that financing absolutely has to go beyond that where possible. So just in terms of how we plan to do governance around this is, one thing we're very clear is FPA are moving away in March. So yes, my role, the whole FPA team is stepping back end of March 31st. We will disappear in a puff of smoke. No, we won't really, but you know, kind of we will go on and be doing other things probably, I'm sure. But as an FPA team, that work will cease. So we're having to think forward. What's going to happen when I'm not here, Debbie's not here, Nick's doing something else possibly. Somebody still needs to be responsible for giving assurance to our funder, the Commonwealth Games, that the money's being spent and it's being all actioned and the outcomes, which we'll come to later, are being achieved. So we're putting in place a BCC officer at the moment, and I talked to Rob about this recently, and we're going through the recruitment process for that, which will take a while, but we've got some time before March. So and also this is a test, you know, we're testing it out for a year to see how well it works. So that's what I wanted to say on the Alliance MOU. Anybody got any comments or questions about that? I think, oh, sorry. Yeah, Emma, do you want to come in?
Sorry, no, just waving my mouse across something.
I mean, just from how I've described it, does it make sense? Are people more comfortable that we've dropped round table and actually alliance is almost kind of 2 levels? So we had 4 organisations who kind of said they wanted to play a lead role, and we've had discussions with all those organisations now, pretty much. Emma, do you want to come back in?
Sorry, I thought we were going to have a look at the MOU itself. I mean, I've got my main question is about there's some language in there which sounds a little bullshitty language, which is
okay.
always better to remove. There was one particular phrase that made me laugh. But my key question is on the partner responsibilities. Are we going to have a discussion about this, or is that set as it is, and when are we going to have? I thought this was what we were going to discuss this morning. You've set up the kind of the CONA responsibilities.
So they're set in stone pretty much, Emma. So those things we need to be delivered by the Alliance, absolutely. So, and that's
but they're a bit. It seems, yeah. Oh, can we have some input into that? Because the fact that the chair and the communications and the management is all in one place is odd. You would tend to have your chair as external to it, and is that a secretariat role? And,
okay, so yeah,
the management of sustainable finance, that's a very, very big, complicated job to be done by a finance organisation. The Green Champion / volunteer coordination and management, again, that's a huge thing. Are we really expecting only one partner to be involved in managing volunteering across the city? And again, activation of parks, is that only one partner?
So we were hoping to build this up collaboratively by working with the 4 organisations who.
Okay, which is why I thought we were having this discussion today.
But we're not doing that now.
And which 4 organisations? I mean, we don't know who they are, and they haven't talked to each other, and we don't. Yeah, it all feels very either stitched up in advance or very vague, and I'm really unclear as to where BOSF would fit in that.
Given the challenge has come to us that we're not. Okay, so the 4 organisations, I'm not sure I'm at liberty to say who they are. If they want to pop it in the chat, they can absolutely. I don't have permission from them to share that detail.
So you've already decided who these organisations are without a tender process?
No, absolutely not, Emma. Absolutely not.
I thought you just said you know who the 4 are.
No. What needs to be done, we know. Absolutely. That's why we're having a tender process for organisations in this meeting to come together and have those discussions, how they think they could fit those roles. So we need someone to lead on sustainable finance. We need someone to lead on volunteer coordination. We need someone to lead on CRM. We need someone to lead on activation and getting the community engaged in those parks. And, you know, we need someone to lead on comms.
And activation is different to volunteering?
Yes. Yeah. So, for instance, if you look at the Dorbury Fields effect, that park was activated way before any volunteers came forward. So,
but the purpose of activation was to engage volunteers and create a sustainable future for those volunteers. So to separate the two would seem odd.
That's fine, but then it's back to the tender then to come back and say, well, we think it would work better this way. So there was one organisation that specifically for us to have a much more open and transparent process, and that's what we're trying to give you now, is saying, okay, right, this is what's needed.
So the CONA Alliance partners are not necessarily the tender deliverers, they're the coordinators?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Emma.
Okay, so for example, Partner C will be leading on Green Champion / volunteer coordination and management, okay, with support towards fundraising. Well, there are a number of organisations across the city who could contribute usefully to that. So is there one Partner C who's going to coordinate that and they may get a small amount of money for coordinating it, but they will be basically working with the breadth of organisations who are involved in volunteering in green and blue spaces. Because to allocate, and we're talking quite large amounts of money for these organisations, that much money to one organisation to develop volunteering, that then ignores all those other organisations who are already doing that? Or
Emma, we're going to talk a lot more about the tender, I think, after 12 o'clock. So there's a lot of questions.
But you're asking us to sign up to an AMOU, which is a semi-legal document, and it feels unclear. I would like, can somebody else join this conversation? Is it just me? Does it make sense to everyone else? Is this just me?
I mean, the MOU is draft at the moment, Emma. So, and it will come out of a tender specification as well. So, Afzal, thank you.
Oh, I'm not on mute. Hi, Amira. Hi, Emma. I mean, firstly, I missed the last meeting, so this may be a continuation of what was discussed previously. I just want to return back to the slides that you had, Amira, with the two roles, the kind of membership and the kind of the action, you know, the delivery part of that. I think personally, the fact, I think we want to be open and inclusive, and the membership gives organizations who want to be involved but don't necessarily want to deliver an opportunity to do that. And I think also provides a kind of a route into maybe organizations who haven't been involved in some of this kind of work and want to get involved and open out to kind of, you know, organizations that are well established. So that's good. I think the other is on the kind of the delivery side of things, and I like the kind of the slide before, which had the kind of focus on alliance and what it said, and particularly the point about action and delivery and impact. And so we really kind of want to see things get and done. I thought I heard you say that there is going to be a formal tender process for the kind of areas that the alliance would be kind of looking to deliver, and you've outlined those. So really, I thought the discussion is, are those the right kind of areas? Now, to a degree, some of those are set because actually the funding says to the Commonwealth Games, we're going to deliver some of these outcomes. And so we're going to have to achieve those. And some of this will be informed by kind of learning of the delivery of the FPA over the last kind of 18 months. So I think it would be helpful for us to, which we're going to do, to have a look at what those draft tender specifications may be, to kind of say, look, does this look about right? Will this give us the outcomes and the deliverables that we're looking for? And then frankly, it's up to either individual organizations or partnerships of organizations who are interested in those elements of work to kind of come forward and say, look, we think we can deliver this on our own, or we think we can deliver this in partnership with whoever kind of in that network. And again, I would see this as an opportunity for more kind of joined up working potentially for people who have not worked together to kind of come and say, look, how do we use our individual organizational experience and strengths to work together to achieve those? So that's how I kind of, someone obviously doesn't like what I've said, reduced Hamira's son to tears with that. So that's how I'd seen this. And I take the point that Emma's making about the kind of the MOU. And again, I personally, Emma, I'm only going to sign up to it, frankly, if I'm happy and satisfied that, you know, it's going to achieve what we wanted to do and is going to be a fit for us as an organization in terms of what we stand for, etc.
Yeah, thanks, Afzal. I think Chris Blythe also had his hand up and wanted to come in on this matter and might want to add some comment to what Afzal's just said as well. Chris, do you want to come in?
Yeah, I stuck my hand up and then took it down again. I think there's a lot of consideration for all the comments, both from Emma and from Afzal. I think what's important is we all remember where we're still at the start of this process, and that flexibility has to be built into the process from everyone as we go forward. You know, I think that was essentially what I was going to say. But I do think that the governance of this is going to be quite challenging, and it's going to be something we're going to need to really set up and get established very early on. But that flexibility and remembering we're at the start of a process is important.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. Just to say as well, you know, we're right at the beginning of this, and we're not going to get it right probably even in this first year. So, you know, I don't think before we've had this kind of setup really in terms of green spaces and organisations working together in collaboration. So, you know, I think flexibility is key here in terms of being willing to work in that way. Can I suggest, folks, that oh, Nick, do you want to come in before we have a break?
Yeah, I was just saying that I was just raising the fact that Natalie Lebrun has just put a question in the chat. You might not see, Amira. Just for clarification, those that sign up to Role 2, for example, do they actually get input into the MOU? So this is the question that's been circulating around really is, does everyone get a chance to contribute to the MOU, or only the big four? It's starting to sound like the European League, the big six. But it's more a question of, yeah, has everyone got a voice in that?
Absolutely. And I've just popped that in the chat. Anybody who was sent the MOU, it was sent to you for a reason, because we think you've got an input to make. And absolutely, you know, there are some key things that the Alliance has to do from our perspective. We're absolutely open to any other ideas that people have in terms of what we think is missing and so forth. But as a minimum, from all the work that we've done in FPA, that is what's coming out as most strongly, and that as a minimum is what the Alliance has to do in terms of delivery. So, but anything else that you think is missing, or you need tweaking or changing or reconsidering, absolutely, we will consider that. Okay, folks. Yeah, absolutely. There are people that aren't on this call today. People aren't responding to us or are saying, actually, take me off the distribution list. So, you know, there's only so much we can do, I think, in terms of bringing a horse to water. We can't force everyone to. We can't force the horse to drink, can we? So, I'm going to suggest this is a good place to stop, and then we'll start talking a bit more about the whole tender process and some of the key outcomes we're looking at from this process as well. So if I give people 10 minutes from now, which is about 12:07, so about, well, if I ask people to come back 12:15, so we have a good 40 minutes to kind of have a discussion, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, speak to you all soon. Bye. Okay, folks, it's just gone 12:15 on my clock, so I hope you've all had a bit of a chance to have a little walk or grab a drink. So we've only got really a few slides left, folks, and I'm hoping, yeah, to again get some good discussion just in terms of the actual process to get the alliance set up. So Ian, we're going to pick this all up now, your question around the whole governance. So so firstly, well, I'm just going to close the door, sorry. Can somebody just give me a quick shout to say that they can see the BCC governance of delivery of City of Nature vision? Is that come up?
Yes, it is.
Real. Okay, great. So in terms of we just want to kind of show that where this all kind of slots in. So at the moment, like as I've said, the acting inclusive growth director in McLeod is very much being championed and owned by Ian. Not to say that inclusive growth is the only part of the council which will help deliver the City of Nature vision, but it has to stop with somebody, the buck, and the growth. So we have just gone out to advert, I believe, as a council for this director role, the purpose director for places, prosperity, sustainability. So that will be the person in due course who will be accountable for ensuring that this is delivered across the city. And then the alliance is very much, oh, Justine's been thrown out. Oh, sorry. The alliance very much, it is very much part of the governance process. So, but the alliance is there to really represent community organisations and resident volunteer voices, green champions. So in terms of right at the top, we have a City of Nature board, and we're still talking through leadership, political leadership, but very much at the moment. And I think, you know, Councillor Shay's done a fantastic job so far in supporting the FPA programme, and we want to see that continue. That will be a member-led board, but also with senior directors on that. But also the City of Nature Alliance absolutely will have a voice here as well. At the moment, we're still working out the terms of reference in terms of that particular group. We've been working on other layers of the governance. So this is one left that we're yet to sort, but I would really like some way of getting community voices onto that group. I would welcome any comments whether people think actually, you know, do we have residents, community members, like the members of the community, residents, citizens sitting on there, or do we have organisations that represent their voices? Happy to get comments on that. Underneath this particular board, we have a, I'll come back to you, Chris, when I finish this, if that's okay. We've got a City of Nature steering group. So this is underneath the directors. It's AD level. So they have a lot of responsibility for particular activity that the council signs up to. That is again following the thread of inclusive growth. It has had its first meeting. It's been chaired by one of Ian McLeod's senior officers, an AD, Simon Hunter Forrest, who is the AD for planning and development. And he's bringing together a whole host of ADs who sit in other parts of the council: education, public health, transport. There's a long list, but most bits of the council are covered here. And underneath that is an operations group. So we also, so within the operational group, again, this is about officers in the council who are actually going to do some of the doing. So for instance, if I'm trying to give an example, if one of the actions identified is around transport infrastructure, for instance, the alliance we won't be looking to the alliance to deliver that. That will be a BCC issue that needs to be tackled and sorted out. If there is an issue, for instance, about housing and where it's being built, and that negotiation, again, I'm sure the City of Nature Alliance will have a view on that. And very much, absolutely, you know, that is a BCC kind of operational thing to deliver, is getting that issue sorted out. But we also want representatives of the Alliance to be sat there as well. We don't have the Alliance set up yet to be able to kind of have you part of these meetings. So, but in due course, when the tender process and everything is done, then absolutely that invitation will be absolutely transparent and open to you all. As I said previously, we are recruiting an officer within BCC to help support the Alliance, to bring it together, make sure policies and protocols and so forth are in place, and that you've got somebody as an identified link within the council who can then have the conversation and so forth with parks and what have you, or other parts of the council as necessary. So Ian, I know you've got quite a few questions. If you want to come in after Chris, that would be fine. Chris, do you want to come in? You might be on mute, Chris, if you are talking.
Sorry, yeah, I've got it. Yeah, I think some of these things may be what Ian's about to pick up on as well. But I think one thing that seems to be missing is local community involvement in Bordesley Highgate, and I'm not sure to what degree that's happened, but you know, there are very active, committed, long-term people in the ward who perhaps should be around this table. You know, Monica Lee would be the first name that springs to mind at Stanhope. So I think there's something there that maybe is just a gap, and I think that perhaps picks up in a little way on what Ian may be about to say. The other thing would be, I'm still a little bit unclear in terms of whether the Alliance is independent of or part of the council, and I think that again is one of the governance things we need to think about. I think that's, to me at the moment, just a little bit unclear. But anyway, there you go, a couple of comments. So at the moment, so BCC forms part of the Alliance. That was agreed, I think, at one of the earlier meetings. Is that absolutely? I think I know what you're saying, Chris. Is I don't think the Alliance could operate completely independently from the council. No. In terms of just from what we're talking about, parks and green spaces, BCC other landowner. Don't want to put our members on the spot here, or maybe Darren perhaps might be a good person to go to first. Sorry. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not meaning completely independent, because yes, you know, the land ownership is an important part, but I think we just need to, as we move through the process, get that clarity both within the MOU and maybe elsewhere about the role that the council plays. So is the Alliance beholden to the council, or is it a partnership? I think that's a really important thing we need to think about as we go through the process. That's really helpful, that insight, Chris, and just that reflection. So yeah, I've made a note of this, especially to kind of pick that up internally. Any other questions, folks? Ian, did you want to? Nick's been answering a few of your questions in the chat. Is there anything you wanted to specifically say?
Yeah, thanks very much, Amira. Yeah, if you don't mind. Yeah, and Nick, you're quite right, has been picking up a fair amount of it. I'm not too sure if I did miss any meetings, but I'm struggling to follow this one through. The definition of madness is keep doing the same things in the same way, expecting a different result. So we've got a community-based alliance. We're not going down a foundation route. I think I understood that correctly. And so we're going with this alliance, which is around about the community. The whole thing is about the community. And in this case, and I understand why it's been drilled down into Highgate. You know, we've accepted that that's from a tree perspective. That's one of the areas that we will be concerned about. And then we have a governance model that excludes anybody from that community proposed on the screen in front of us. And I'm just thinking that that's just doing the same thing again and again and again in the same way. Do any of the people that you've kind of got fingered for those posts live there, work there? Are they even within 20 miles of Birmingham? There has to be an engagement from the community themselves. The groups that I work with, such as BTFL and BTP, are community-led, governed by the community people, by volunteers, by trustees within the charity, etc., etc. And try not to be politicised. There's an issue around council officers running the governance model for a community group that will always be politicised. They can't help it. It's not their fault. They're answerable to the elected members. So this is a governance model that's kind of, we've seen 1,000 times before and has never really worked. Just my thoughts. And thank you for giving me time to express them.
Oh, not at all, Ian. Nick, do you want to come in before I comment? Thank you.
Yeah, I think that was points well made, Ian, and I think they're also well made by the others on this call. I think what's got to be appreciated is what Chris said earlier, is that we're literally at the start of a process rather than at the end of the process. It's incredibly messy, and I would challenge Ian that actually this hasn't happened before, in that certainly when it comes to parks and open spaces, there has never been a linkage, as it were, right through to the top of the organisation, or a lateral linkage across the organisation. And that is one of the fundamental changes that we're making here. The development of this process has had to go through really odd arrangements, very much dictated to by COVID working arrangements, which is been a huge frustration to us. In that, under no circumstances would we ever create something that doesn't come from the community as opposed to dropped in. But what we have to show here is that the council can create a structure or create a mechanism that would be responsive to the community, a way in which the council as a whole could be responsive to the community. And what you've got at the moment is a council structure and a council arrangement that is not responsive or able to necessarily respond. So we have to try and put something in place, and alongside that we have to have conversations with all of you, setting up some sort of an alliance, and have a structure and a mechanism to have that community activity and that community voice locked into that corporate arrangement. So you need both, and both are equally important. But at the moment, the danger is, and that's the thing you're spotting, is that we're setting them up separately rather than setting them up jointly. That's purely down to the way in which the council does business and its process. But as an FPA team, what we are keen to do is to make sure that they do talk to each other and they are set up in a way that will work as a functional process. So I'm just trying to explain that we're not at all dismissing everything that you're saying, because absolutely we do not want to create same as usual. So I don't think we are creating same as usual, but it might look like that right now, but that is not the intention.
And what I would say, Ian, I think your points are really valid, and you know, we're still working through this. We're working through so many processes at the moment. We haven't got sign off from anywhere right now, but we're trying to do at the same time and test while we get sign off for the whole thing as well. So this absolutely is this is right for the time now for you to suggest changes and make them as well, you know, for us to kind of work out together. So I'd really welcome you if you want to kind of, you know, take a look at these slides when they come out and actually kind of say, well, actually it needs to have, if these words are missing, you know, and they need to be in there and you know, and help us with that. So please, absolutely. I'd really reach out to you, given you've spoken so articulately and passionately about this, to please help us with that. Afzal, thank you.
Thanks for that. Obviously, the form, and we're discussing form here, aren't we? You really should follow function. So what is it that we're looking to achieve? And there are at least two structures going on here. One is the council governance, and it will do what it needs to do in order to get its business done. And you've kind of highlighted the different structures there. And obviously then there's the alliance, and that's not sorted out yet. In fact, there's a whole, so that's I suspect the reason why it's not as definitive. And frankly, at this point, I wouldn't want it to be that kind of definitive. And can I just say this in passing, really, both to you and the rest of the council team, because actually the fact that you're sharing this and we're having these kind of discussions is welcome in itself, because kind of often these things are presented to us, here it is, and this is what we're going to do. So the fact that we're having this discussion, I think, is welcome. The other thing that is welcome is, I think, having a dedicated resource. So that officer that's kind of been mentioned, I think that's really important, because there is going to be a dedicated resource that is going to be needed to take this kind of stuff through. So it is someone's job to be able to do that. One of the things I would just say is, when it comes to the council structure, the board, steering group, operational groups, etc. I mean, the question there would be, whoever's chairing that, is say, not how can the community be represented, how is the community represented at each of those stages? And it may well be that actually that there are, there's the folks on Borsal and Borsleith and Highgate, is it? Well, at what level would that be appropriate? So I think I would be asking those kind of structures within the council, say, how is the community going to be represented? And they should have a good kind of response to that. And clearly there will be a relationship with the alliances, part and parcel of that kind of mechanism. And surely the alliance may well also have a view on what it needs, where it needs to be represented, and how. All I would say is that this will take kind of time and commitment. And the more of these structures that there are, the more time and commitment that's going to be required from us, in order to kind of do that effect.
People wanted more structure. People wanted more work streams and subgroups, and I was like, yes, this is enough. This is enough. Because otherwise, you end up just being in meetings, not doing the work. And as you know, Afzal, you know me quite well by now. That isn't my style of working at all, just to talk about it and not do it. So yeah, really valid points as well. And again, we will ask the alliance where they want to be, where they think their role is best represented. You could be at every part of the process, a different delivery partner perhaps that makes up the alliance, but I think that's for you guys to work out. The offer's there is an open invite to the door is fully open from my perspective, but you have to have the capacity and the ability to kind of respond to that as well. So, but as an alliance, that there's more than one organisation, so the load should be spread. That equally, then it comes back to the communication between the partners as well. That it's one story really between as one alliance. So, okay, thank you for that, Ian and Chris, and also Afzal. So now getting down to the kind of things the alliance needs to deliver. We've touched upon this already as part of kind of the CRM and the MOU type bits earlier, but there are some things that are really, really key. And again, we're still playing around with this lightly, so forgive us if it changes a little bit after this conversation. We need when I say someone, not one person or has to be just one organisation, but just for ease of me saying, when I say someone, we need there to be some really, really clear comms with the public. And by the public, I mean residents, I mean organisations, community groups and what have you, who can tell people what's going on in terms of the alliance. Just as we do at the moment. You know how Debbie runs our Future Park Accelerator social media account, and we use that to get lots of information out and bring information in as well. We've been talking a lot about websites as well. So we currently have a Naturally Birmingham website. We're in the midst of sorting out an internal BCC City of Nature, not website. I've got to be really careful with my language here, because as BCC, an organisation, there's only one website. All the microsites that you might be familiar with, they're all going. So anything that we want to have a City of Nature has to fit within the existing BCC website. So just a bit of extra information here. You've probably seen Be Bold, Be Birmingham branding going up around the city. For those of you who live in certain parts or travel through Cornwall Row, I was down on a Commonwealth Games talk, and there was some signage going up opposite the allotments on Walsall Road about Be Bold, Be Birmingham. So this is very much about Commonwealth Games and about Birmingham getting ready and being proud of who we are. So there is a particular brand, Be Bolder, Be Greener, which is what this is all going to sit under. So we're working with internal comms to make sure that our web pages internally reflect the City of Nature in its entirety. So there's still a conversation to be had as to whether we have a separate City of Nature Alliance website so that the Alliance can talk about all its work, or whether we actually put it in to our BCC web pages. But again, we need to work through that. We could do either or, but it will, and Aslan and I talked about this a little bit before as well, some of the challenges of having to not have control over that as an outside organisation. So there's that to consider as well. There's a CRM that has to work as well as part of the Alliance. We need to have something, and Chris's points are so valid here about making sure that we get the specification for that right, so that CRM does what we need it to do. But we need an organisation or a partner or partnership, what have you, to take ownership of that and make that happen. And we also need somebody to be, for everybody here that's on this call works with volunteers or green champions, day in, day out. Those people know how to volunteer, how to give up their time to commit to green spaces. But there's a whole host of other people that have no idea even where to begin or even how to start, even though that's probably quite shocking for most people on this call. And this was Councillor Chatfield's point, and one of the meetings that we had, I'm pretty sure, was that there needs to be somebody, that there needs to be a point of contact that anybody interested in volunteering can go to. And that's also needed as part of this. So not just for Borsley and Highgate, this would be a citywide thing, but you know what? That would be a good place to start, really. So, and then in terms of other actions that we need, and these will all be in the specification as they come out, we need the actions in Borsley and Highgate to very much tie into the Birmingham Fair audit, which Nick talked you through. So the actions need to relate back to helping people to become involved around being healthy, about fairness as well. I put notice boards down there. You're probably thinking, what on earth are notice boards doing there? Well, that's because it's a way of providing access to the park for people. A notice board allows you to tell people what is going on in that park. It's an immediate conversation starter. Around greenness as well, so wildlife restoration, tree planting, and also a really important part of it, the Alliance needs to find a way of sustainable funding. This 150k is a one-off. It's come from Commonwealth Games Legacy Fund, and there needs to be a way that the Alliance, supported by us, BCC, we will help you do this, is to find a way for you to look for other means of funding and what have you, to make that 150k go far and wide. Because even though we're talking about Borsley and Highgate in this particular specification and the tender, there will be a requirement that thought is going into the other wards that are next on our hit list, so to speak. So that map that Nick showed you, there are 13 red wards. Borsley and Highgate is the first one, but we have a sequence now agreed with inclusive growth. So we'll be looking at, I always miss one out. There's Gravelly Hill, there's Borsal Heath, Central, I think it is. There's also Newtown as well. So we're working through those site audits as well. And then project management, absolutely. As I've said before, we're recruiting a BCC officer. What we can do is share the job description with the Alliance. You can see kind of what we're looking for that individual to do. And we can probably can give us some feedback on whether you think that would meet the needs of the Alliance as well. But that there is a support, absolutely, and should help the Alliance function and get its feet off the ground. So in terms of outcomes, when we're thinking about, well, actually, okay, there's two main things really that people need to be aware of in terms of this funding. So, and our funder, Cat Orchard, is asking for this as well. So actually a tender process is really helpful in that respect in terms of making this crystal clear, so there's no argument about it. So, you know, it has to be an alliance for this stage anyway. Everyone has said to us they don't want a new organisation. They don't want just one person doing this or one organisation doing it. It has to be an alliance. So, you know, so it has to be more than one. And I think it's up to you. If you want to go into partnership with another organisation to be the delivery partner, then yeah, show us how you can do it. But the key thing here is it's about identifying, recognising and leveraging differences or strengths to create value and impact. So that's a key thing to be thinking about. And any money, that 150k that has been given to us by the Commonwealth Games, it has to be spent by March 2023. So we're hoping that it doesn't take that long to spend the money. But yeah, that is the deadline for it to be spent by, and for the outcomes to have been achieved that we've said we're going to achieve. So what are the actual outcomes that we expect to happen from the 150k? So we've divided it again into place, people and sustainable finance. So we absolutely need an action plan for the Alliance pilot project to be delivered in Borsley and Highgate. And this is the meeting I mentioned right at the beginning. We were going to cover actions today, but we haven't got enough time. So we'll be setting up a separate meeting ASAP in September for those Alliance. So for those people who are interested in being part of the Alliance as a member, and or actual delivery partners. So we need to agree that with you as an Alliance, and that's what we're going into the specification. And then we also, because the site audits will be done for these, this is the wrong, I've got Erdington down, which is incorrect. That needs to be Gravelly Hill. So I will change that before this slide goes out to everybody after this meeting. Those site audits will be completed by the end of September. That's what I've agreed with my internal team and FPA. Those audits, together with the Park Service, we've got DPMs on standby to help out with this. And the Alliance throughout the 12 months or so from when it starts will have to then work with residents, communities and what have you, and also BCC to come up with an action plan that you think the Alliance could help deliver as well. And that is very much linked to the sustainable finance, which I'll come back to in a second. From a people perspective, what we need to see that there is a CRM in place, that there is a point of contact for volunteers, especially in BHI. And you know, yeah, let's put a number to it. We want to have at least 50 local volunteers for Green Champions in place in Borsley and Highgate. We need to have 5. So Green Champions, I hear Emma's comment that, you know, semantics, you know, it means different things to different people. When we talk about kind of Green Champions here, volunteer coordinators, to have is somebody who really takes responsibility for almost coordinating volunteers. So that kind of happens already in Friends of Park groups. You know, the chair acts, whether they know it or not, acts as some kind of coordinator for the whole Friends of Park group. We need that. We need a model where that has a real interest in volunteering and is able to pull in other volunteers for smaller jobs. This is what we are looking for in terms of the model to kind of help move our park service to a different model as well of volunteering. It's almost like a pyramid that you have kind of, you know, you have very few paid staff at the top, but then as you get to the bottom of the pyramid and the base widens, you have more and more volunteers. We also need to have engagement with children, schools and families in place within the public open space sites. We know that's really missing from every single POS in Borsley and Highgate. When we put a number there around 500 people, we think could be engaged as part of this funding across Borsley and Highgate. And we also need to have some kind of comms activity in place as well. That will be around a monthly newsletter, similar to what FPA already produces. Social media presence, press releases where appropriate. And from a finance perspective, we need to see a plan of how the Alliance will actually raise money for the 4 subsequent wards. So it doesn't have to have a lot of detail, but actually how would you go about doing it? How would you go about looking for the money? Which places would be your first port of call? Who's gonna do that work in the Alliance? And then we also need to see an action plan in terms of if you've put in place roles that are helping you to deliver place and people, how are those roles going to stay on? So is that a part of your sustainable finance funding plan as well? So how will the funding for the CRM, the maintenance of it, continue? If, for instance, you've had to appoint a new volunteer point of contact, how is that role going to stay on? If you've had to employ a brand new comms officer, how is that, So this is where the Alliance needs to work out how much of it could be done by existing roles and just be augmented slightly and so forth. So, but again, I think this is where we think it's really important that the Alliance has scope to put their professional expertise in. Please tell us if you want a specification that goes down to the nth detail, so there's no confusion, or actually you want to be able to come back and say, right, okay, yeah, you've given us the basics, give us some breathing space, give us some room to be creative, and tell us what you think will work. Okay, I'm just going to pause there before we get into next steps, just for any questions, and I can see that Chris has his hand up. Chris, do you want to come in?
Yeah, it's a question as much as a comment. But when we talk about sustainable finance, as organisations, that's something that we try and do every day in, day out, and finding additional monies for keeping roles in place or developing new roles. I have a slight nervousness that that part of the pot, if you like, or that part of the outcomes will be in danger of taking money opportunities away from the groups who are doing it, and may present a conflict of interest. So take BOSIF, for example. A funding opportunity comes up, and do we apply for that funding opportunity as BOSIF, or do we apply for that funding opportunity as the City of Nature Alliance, which would mean the Alliance had to have a much stronger constitution, etc. And I think the same question applies to other members in the room, be that CRT, Wildlife Trust, Whitton Lodge, and those that I've missed. So we need to be careful, I think, in terms of not, as an alliance, taking out money from what is, at the end of the day, a very difficult pot to get money out of for the charity sector anyway. Taking out money for the alliance, which may otherwise have gone to one of the constituent groups in some form or another.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Yeah, I think that's a valid point. Anybody else got any immediate thoughts about what we've presented? Would really welcome any feedback. And Debbie and I were talking about this before the meeting started, about just being us to have clarity as an FPA team for when the specification goes out. Do you want more detail in terms of, being crystal clear what it is that we think needs to happen, or do you want more flexibility in terms of being able to give a response that kind of, fits your professional expertise? So you might be answering that question, but if you want to come in.
Yeah, thanks. I think in terms of the specification, I think what would be helpful is to be clear on those outcomes and the deliverables. So those things that are definitely needed to be delivered, 5 of this or 15 of that, I think, and there's an expectation, then I think they need to be set out in what that is. So on the communications front, for example, it would be, well, how many newsletters, just to make sure that these things are kind of expectations are kind of managed effectively. So I think quantifying it where it's necessary and needed, and you've got some of those on there. So I think I would say a level of detail is helpful, and then I think we should be free to think about how we innovate, how we develop our partnerships, relationships in order to deliver against those outputs, the deliverables, as well as the outcomes. And there may well be added value. That certainly, I mean, just thinking about who's on this this call today, there should be a huge amount of added value that should be brought to those. So just going back to, I think, clarity on definitely those things that we need to be delivered with numbers. I think that's always helpful. I mean, the reality of it is 150k is a lot of money, but it's if you think about it, over 18 months to deliver, though, it's not a lot of money. And so I think part of that job, and I don't know where it goes, Hamira, in that first column under the kind of, I can't remember, would you mind just putting that previous slide back on, the one that kind of said people and, yeah, so place and sustain, there may be links between that, because I think some of it is about using these resources in order to kind of, fill gaps or enhance services. But it should also be about marshalling existing resources that are in the system. Now, that may be within our partners and within the councils. And it may go some way towards the point that I think Chris just made, that this should definitely not, create additional competition. It should promote collaboration within, the organizations and networks. So I think would have failed if all we're doing is setting something else to compete with, Birmingham Open Spaces Forum or us or whoever else, then that defeats the purpose. So I would be keen to understand in the outcomes, talking about actually how will existing resources that are there, they could be people, they could how will they be marshaled, how will they be brought into to enhance what's being promoted? And actually the question could be, how are you going to ensure that there's collaboration with what with whoever's responding to that? So and that point about sustainability should run through each of those kind of the outcomes.
That's really helpful. Really, thank you. Gareth?
Yeah, it's a bit of a tricky one in a way, because obviously you'd want to have as much detail in the specification and really clear outcomes and objectives so people know. But at the same time, I think that there probably is more development work that's needed to be done, certainly in some areas, to kind of really establish the sort of way of working. And I think there could be a danger in over specifying that you end up sort of defining something that actually there needs to be a process that's maybe led by some of these organizations. So at the same, but I think we are where we are, and if there's a fairly tight time frame to deliver, I think yes, you just kind of have to try and sort of get a balance between giving really clear outcomes and outputs that you want done, but also building in and I maybe, as you said, kind of asking the questions to sort of challenge, well, what would be the most effective way of doing this, and how would you work with the other partners to make sure so that you're not committing early on to something that may need to change.
Really helpful, Gareth. Thank you. I think what I'm hearing is really outcomes need to be really super clear and like deliverables. That's what I'm hearing. So that's what I'm hearing, and I think that is going to be the focus that we take. So thank you everyone who's kind of contributed to that. And just to also say, just because you see 3 sections here, it doesn't mean that it should be limited to 3 organisations, or it has to be 3 organisations, and definitely it doesn't have to be that it's one organisation that does all of place, one that does all of finance. There could be between the number of organisations that want to play a delivery role, there could be elements of people and place that you feel you have strengths and skills and to be able to do. So yeah, I'm just very conscious the way it's been laid out. It could look as though we're looking for 3 organisations and each to lead on either place or people or finance, but that really is up to you to kind of have the conversations with other organisations that are here, not just in this meeting, but you've got the distribution list of all the people that we have tried to engage with. Might be others that aren't on that list that you think actually, oh my gosh, they'd be brilliant to work with on this. So I appreciate that the MOU, I mean, we've had to draft something without really knowing who's doing what at the moment, which probably why it feels so, it looks as though it's all been decided, but it absolutely hasn't. So, but we can change that when it comes out in the specification as part of the tender. Emma, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, I may have been, I'm looking for some clarification here then. So are the people tendering to meet the outcomes different to the alliance partners?
So yes. So
is it 2 completely different? Is this where I've got it wrong? Is it they're 2 completely different processes?
So yes. So if you want to just be part of the alliance, that you don't have to be part of a tender process.
No, sorry, if I want to tender for some of these activities, I thought that the tender process was about that the partner organisations were going to divvy up the money. That was the original thing, wasn't it? And then we were requesting outcomes, which you provided, and they're very helpful. But are the alliance partners different to the people who are tendering? They might be the same people, but I was trying to fit the 2 tasks together and they're not.
So if we go back to this slide. So yeah, so there's almost, so what we're calling them members, again, semantics are so
let me just, so you've got your 4 partners, partner A, B, C and D.
Again, Emma, I'll try you to not to be fixed on that. It could be.
Oh, I won't be fixed on that then. Sorry.
No, okay. Sorry. No,
this is it's 2 minutes to 1. I'll leave that conversation to be held another time.
But I think it's really important because people might be thinking it as well. So please don't look at that MOU and think, it only has to be 4 partners. We were just trying to show what an MOU could look like in terms of.
Okay, so yeah, that isn't the message that came across. You said the MOU was set when we talked about it earlier on, and those partners were set. And then I am now confused that the outcomes that you want us to tender for is completely separate. So the people who will tender for the outcomes, and it's the outcomes that 150k, not the partner organisations.
So there are key things that the alliance has to deliver on, and that's what we've just talked about, kind of in terms of the outcomes here. Okay.
So I've now got in my head that these are actually separate activities, and I'll unless somebody else has understood it better than me.
I think in an attempt to provide an example of what an MOU might look like, perhaps it's come across as very fixed, that we think it's going to be 4 partners, and that really wasn't our intention. So apologies if that's caused massive confusion. I wanted to show, without knowing who's going to be tendering for this, the kind of things we expect partners to be involved in. And part of the reason for mixing things up a little bit as well was just to show that you don't have to just do one thing as a delivery partner of the alliance. You can do a mixture. Sorry, Afsal, do you want to come back in? Sorry, I thought I saw a hand go up. Was it somebody else's hand?
You did see a hand go. I just think what I've heard so far is clarity, and I'm hoping this goes to the point that Emma was making, because I thought I was clear and then I was unclear. I think I'm back to being clear again, which is there will be specifications, people will respond. I think once you know who those providers are following that process, there may be 3, there may be 5, there may be 10, I don't know. Then at that point, I think there is a separate discussion to be had, because clearly if you've been commissioned to deliver something and you've got an alliance, there may well be conflicts and so forth that will need to be managed. So I think the outcome of this process, which will be clear and transparent, and the one thing which may be kind of helpful to understand is that outside of this process, or it may be worth considering, because now we know a number of organisations may think we want to tender for this. Fine. How will alliance members who maybe aren't thinking about tendering to be involved in the, the appraisal, the commissioning procurement process? So I think some thought to how the alliance members could be involved in that would be helpful.
That's a really good point, actually, Afzal. Really good point, which comes up to my next steps, actually. If we do, I'm conscious, folks. It's 1 minute past 1, so we won't keep you very long. Oh, I didn't know where the next step slide has gone, Debbie. Ah, sorry, it was there before. I'm not sure where it's gone now. For some reason, it hasn't. Right, let me just do a separate screen share. Sorry, folks. I was thinking it was going quite smoothly. Right, hopefully you folks can see this. Okay. So at the moment, we've got some steps to do really, really quite immediately. And I think based on the conversation we've just had, I'm not too concerned about the MOU just yet. But we do need to know who wants to be in the alliance in terms of just membership, so not delivery, but just membership. So we will be writing out to everybody, so that, because I think we are annoying quite a lot of people who don't want to be contacted, but in the sake of transparency, we don't want people to feel excluded. So I think we've now had 3 meetings and people have had lots of opportunity to join them, and now we just need to know who actually wants to be in this alliance, really. So we'll do that straight away. We will get everything distributed, the presentation, the recording and the notes ASAP. I think there are elements of the MOU that we can absolutely lock down. Other elements we absolutely can't, because we don't know who the delivery partners are going to be yet and what their roles are. So I'll discuss with the team how we get that out. But the next set of blue actions, really. So we really want your input on the action planning for Boards in Highgate. We've talked so much about it, and we have an action plan, but it's a very kind of BCC focus action plan. It takes on some learning from other parts of the city as well in terms of what's worked from a community perspective, but we would like to take this to you because this will absolutely form part of the specification. We need to do that in September. We're aiming for the 1st of October for the tender process. I've said draft date because I don't want to be held to it, because that might be, it's not in my control when these things go up onto Find It in Birmingham. So, but we will give people at least 4 weeks to be able to put together their response. And I'm hoping that you've got enough information now, as at this point, to start thinking about a collaboration before the tender comes out. And we're also looking, literally the paper was agreed on Friday for City of Nature officer role, and I'm now in the process of getting that sorted out internally, which will take some time. And then we're kind of into the later actions, which is really around delivering the project. So, and then monitoring it, and then reporting back Commonwealth Games, really, in terms of how we spent the money and the outcomes that we've achieved. So I hope this all makes sense, folks. We are absolutely open to any more conversations. Before we go into tender, we can absolutely talk to everybody. Once we get into the tender phase, it's all through clarification. So please, please, you know where myself, Nick and Debbie are. We're here to help clarify, support, give guidance if that's helpful. So please do reach out. There was a lot to cover here, folks, and thanks for sticking on. I don't think we've lost anybody. So, but yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you to everybody who's been involved in the discussion. I think coming from where we were in May, we've come a long way, and there's I think a clear plan is now emerging. I hope everybody feels that way, and yeah, we'll be in touch really soon about a next workshop for the action planning stage, and I hope people can come to that to give their thoughts and views as well. So okay, so yeah, massive thank you to you all again, and we'll get everything out ASAP. So take care, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.